just a little bit obsessed with tea, so when we booked a trip on Princess Cruises Crown Princess, it should come as no surprise that one of the things I was most excited about was the chance to have afternoon tea at sea. I've had afternoon tea at several places here in Pittsburgh, a bunch of different places back home in Ohio, even at the Grand Floridian at Walt Disney World, and even at the Plaza in New York. So I've had quite a few different afternoon tea experiences. So as a self-proclaimed tea snob, I was really interested to see how Princess Cruise Lines was going to stack up. On the Crown Princess, afternoon tea was served in the Da Vinci dining room on sea days, and it was clearly labeled in the Princess Patter each day. We didn't need any reservations, and while there definitely were a decent number of people each time that we went, I wouldn't say that it was overly crowded. Dress code was pretty casual. I would say whatever you would normally wear in the main dining room. So we saw everything from shorts and tank tops and t-shirts to some cute little sundresses. Basically, just don't show up in your swimwear. Now for me personally, getting a little dressed up is kind of part of the fun of tea, so I did tend to dress up a little bit, but nothing too crazy. Unlike your typical afternoon tea, there isn't any sort of a menu that you make selections from. There are white-gloved servers making the rounds continuously, and you can have as much of whatever catches your fancy as you would like. This carried over to the tea itself. Now, typically at afternoon tea, I see that you would have a selection of teas to choose from. You would pick one, and a pot of that tea would be brought to your table. Here, instead, they just had pots of a pretty standard black tea making the rounds continuously, and you could have as much of that as you like. Now, the cruise ship definitely had a variety of flavors available, and I assume that if you requested one of those, they would probably bring you a bag of that. I don't think they're going to bring you a pot of any of it. It's going to be just possibly some hot water and bag of that particular tea. That was fine for me in this particular case. The convenience of it was very nice that as soon as you were getting low, there was usually somebody there to refill your tea, so it's not like you were sitting around waiting long periods of time with nothing to drink. And on each of the tables was sugar and a selection of other sweeteners. As for food, of course, there was plenty, as is typical both of cruise ships and of afternoon tea. If you've never been to afternoon tea, I know I went into my first one thinking, oh, we'll sip a little tea, have a little snack, and in a couple hours we'll be hungry again. I have never found that to be the case with any afternoon tea that I have gone to. There is a ton of food. It's misleading because it's all in little bites, but usually I get a good amount of food at afternoon tea, and on a cruise ship, of course, there's going to be plenty. Unlike the typical afternoon tea, though, there are not set courses that you're going to be brought in a specific order. There are just various servers, each one assigned their particular course, generally constantly making the rounds. So as one gets to you, they will offer you what they have and move on. There were, of course, fresh scones with jam, marmalade, cream, that sort of thing, and the only thing that I would have at all to say negative about the entire tea experience is that they were raisin scones. And personally speaking, the fastest way to ruin an otherwise perfectly good baked good is to add useless raisins to it. But even then, they were fine. They were perfectly all right. I don't hate raisins. I just am not a fan. So heads up, the only scones that were available every time that we went on this cruise were always raisin scones. There was also a server with a tray of assorted sandwiches. Now, typically with afternoon tea, you don't really get a lot of choice in what your sandwiches are, at least as far as I've seen. It's usually, these are our tea sandwiches today, and you're going to get one of each of those. In this case, it was kind of an improvement, I would say. The server would come with the tray, explain what each of the sandwiches were, and there was always quite a variety of them, and then you could request which ones you wanted. So if you love egg salad but hate the chicken salad they were offering, you could just choose the egg salad, or even get multiples of that if you liked. So you could get as much of what you wanted, and you weren't left with a sandwich that you really didn't care so much for. And of course, there was a server who had a tray of assorted desserts. The dessert tray had various cookies, cakes, tarts, all wonderful and delicious looking. It was very hard to choose on the dessert tray. But the beauty of cruise food is you don't have to choose. You could literally have whatever you wanted from the tray. One thing I was interested to see after the first day was if they were going to change the tea sandwiches and the desserts from day to day, and I was happy to note that while there were some that carried over from one day to the next, they definitely changed a lot of each of those trays. So that was really nice to see, get a little bit of variety. It definitely made it worth coming back for tea on multiple days. One thing I did find a little bit interesting is that on all the days that we went, I never saw a cucumber sandwich, which I find interesting because I know for a fact that they had plenty of cream cheese and cucumbers on the ship. So since cucumber sandwiches are sort of a standard at tea, to not see them at all on any of those days was a little bit interesting to me. I mean, I'm sure it's fine. It's not like I was dying for a cucumber sandwich. It was just interesting to me that something that's so sort of standard and traditional with tea was nowhere to be found. So this was definitely not the best or the fanciest afternoon tea that I've ever been to, but they're working on some major setbacks by being at sea. For instance, tiered servers take up a lot of space. I know for a fact because I have several in my pantry, and that doesn't really go well with being on a cruise ship, which is always lacking in space. So it totally makes sense that they serve the way they do on the large trays. But in the end, I think that comes out to be a positive because it gives you more of an adaptable experience where you can choose the items that you specifically want. So while losing a little bit of that ambience is a little bit sad, overall it was kind of interesting to be able to pick and choose your own tea items, which you don't normally get. All of that, plus changing up a lot of the sandwiches and desserts from day to day, definitely made the experience good enough that we wanted to go back multiple days. And even if you're a bit of a tea snob like me, the novelty of having afternoon tea at sea definitely made it worth going at least once. So what do you think? Is having afternoon tea at sea something that interests you? Let me know in the comments down below if this is something that you would like to try. I have plenty of cruise videos I've already posted and they are linked down below. Be sure to check those out. But I have plenty more to come. So subscribe and ring the bell for notifications to get a little email notification every time I upload. Have a beautiful day and I'll see you next time.